Hello everyone and welcome to the MiniDebConf 2020 Gaming Edition. I'm Francesco and today I want to talk to you about a topic that I really found interesting. This topic is about music and sound assets in open source games and Libre games. I'm a musician and a composer too, and actually I compose music and soundtracks for video games, focusing especially on open source games and Libre games. I also run a Twitch channel featuring open source games only, and I did this just to spread awareness about open source software and to promote open source games that are very cool and are out there, they just wait to be discovered by people. I have many years of experience in recording studios, and all the people that I met, nobody knew about Linux and nobody cared about Linux. Actually, they thought most of the times that it was too difficult to use, and they never think about using Linux as main production system to produce music and work on music. So this is the main reason why people don't use Linux today, or at least not the majority of people. I am thinking about, for example, to Ubuntu Studio. That's actually very easy to understand, very easy to utilize, and it was made having music in mind, but today it's difficult to explain to people or friends that Linux is also and can be very user-friendly. Many developers just don't support Linux, and that's bad. Music people just want to use the best software out there, and most of it is not available on Linux, unfortunately. So actually I discovered Linux many years ago, like 7-8 years ago, and I fell in love with it. It was also my first experience with open source game, because I discovered Battle for Westnot and I played on that game many hours. That was just a very particular experience for me. I installed Linux on my old netbook, and that was very slow. That was a cheap machine, and now I just switched to Linux on all my machines, and I run Linux on my laptop that I used to play live on stage, and on my main machine here that I used to compose music and compose soundtracks. So after I installed Linux on all my machines, I wiped off Windows from all of them, and that's because I think Linux is just better. So we also have to talk about Linux gaming. Linux gaming is sorta good, and I think that it's improving over time. You know, there are many people out there that are doing a great job actually promoting Linux for gaming, like Anthony from LTT, and I think that is a good step towards promoting Linux as a good system to have games and play games. I also think that having commercial games on Linux is also very important to promote open source games themselves. When I discovered Linux, I actually wanted to play to my favorite games, so I started to play to Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Hollow Knight, and many games like that. They had native Linux support on Steam, so that was easy to play. But after I started to play those games, I actually found many open source games or Libre games, and I'm still playing these games today because I think that they deserve more attention. So those games were built with having a different philosophy in mind, and that's a cool thing. So I think that people can discover and learn things about Linux and open source software just playing their favorite games, and after that they can learn about things that matter the most, like open source software, Libre software, that could help Linux to grow and actually could bring more people that can help in development of Linux games and audio application actually. So I like many open source games like Valier Tier, Battle for Westnot, Mindustry, Red Eclipse 2, and Xonotic, FreeDroid RPG. I played them all, and I am playing more and more open source games on my Twitch channel to promote those games. Today we have many tools that we can use to produce music on Linux. I still think that professional tools are needed if you need to do professional music and professional audio production. By the way, many free tools are reaching a really good quality level, and there are many of them available on Linux that are good enough. If you need one of those professional tools available on Windows only, you can still use Wine and use one of the VST bridges that are out there, and they work really well. For example, sometimes I need to use some simple libraries that come with proprietary software and proprietary plugins, and I'm forced to use those bridges. But fortunately enough, Wine works really well with those plugins. So the digital audio workstation, or DAW, is one of the most important pieces of software that we need to produce music. Actually, you can produce music and record music without digital audio workstation, but actually only if you produce music in analog without using digital at all. If you use a computer, if you record music, you just need a DAW. So the DAW is the program that allows you to record music, to play music or play live, and you can do many things with it. Also, you can run plugins in the DAW. You can use virtual instruments to play or virtual instruments to record music. So that's why I'm talking about that, and this is really important. Luckily enough, we have some choice today in Linux. Today we have some non-free DAWs available on Linux, and they are just proprietary, they are not free. For example, we have Renoise, Reaper, Bidwig, and they are all available with native Linux support. But I use Ardor personally because I want to make this project grow up, and it's been growing since 20 years ago. And I hope that I'm giving the good example to people, teach them that they can use Linux to produce music, and they can also use free tools and a free DAW to produce actually professional music. So, talking about open source DAWs, we have many of them. For example, we have Ardor 6 that I mentioned, we have ZRhythm, LMMS, and honestly, there are many others that I never tried. Also, Qtractor, it must be mentioned because it's very popular. The main point of this talk today are plugins, because they are really the pieces of the puzzle that you need to compose music today, because many people are just using virtual instruments instead of real instruments. For example, I have this keyboard here. I can use some of the sounds that I have inside this keyboard, but many times virtual instruments are just better, and they are free most of the times. They are free in cost, not free software. It's been easier to produce music without going into a recording studio and recording your tracks actually without having real instruments and just using samples. For example, it could be very difficult to record an orchestra if you don't have the room, if you don't have the record studio, if you don't have money. So it's easier to use a virtual instrument that can play an orchestra. So, talking about plugin, on Linux we have LV2 and LASDPA formats. We have also Linux VST, but most common ones are LV2 and Linux VST. So, unfortunately, not many commercial plugins support Linux natively, so we need to run those plugins through Wine and through VST bridges. I'm using one of the best VST bridges out there, and this is called YaBridge, and was made by a cool guy I met already called Robert van der Helm. You can find his projects on GitHub, and this is really doing a good work running Windows plugins into Linux with Wine, and we can still improve that compatibility, but that should be used just as last resort when you don't have free tools good enough to produce good music and you need, for example, that sample orchestra. Talking about the comparison, actually, that's pretty normal that free tools are not good enough as commercial ones, because they have big budgets. They pay good musicians with very expensive instruments, they record with very high quality microphones. That's not always the case, but most of the times it is. So for example, Spitfire Audio just does a very cool plugin called Labs, and they give you free VST to use in your compositions, and actually the quality is really awesome. So I hope that we have that quality, talking about FOSS software. For example, I discovered the VS CO Orchestra recently, and I think many of those samples are really good. You can use them using SFZ format, so sound fonts, if someone is familiar with that. And they're great actually, they can be used with no problem at all. We have also free plugins to use sound fonts, but we don't have that level of complexity that comes with more professional audio plugins. So my dream here will be to see a very nice plugin that allows me to play with samples, actually, piano or orchestra, because they're important for musicians that compose music for video games or films actually. And we're not there yet. We need more time to develop more libraries, and we need people actually. So that's why Linux need more people that come and discover Linux as their main production system. So as a side effect actually, if we can grab more people and make them use Linux, actually telling them that Linux is not difficult to use and you can have all the VSTs, all the plugins you want that you were using on Windows, they could actually switch to Linux and they can contribute, so we can create more free tools for everyone that's composing and producing music on Linux. Actually, I was really scared when I switched from Windows to Linux, because many of plugins that I had were not available on Linux, and I was forced to use VST bridges to play with them. They are important for me. They have a high quality, and going back to lower quality for me, it will not be great. I mean, I just used 2 plugins that runs on Windows that I'm running through VST bridge on Linux, but I can't find something better in the Linux ecosystem talking about free tools. So for now I'm using them. I hope that in future I can replace them with free tools only. Talking about free tools, I use many of them. For example, I use Helus, that is a good pipe organ emulator. I have also Helm, that is a synthesizer that really can do many things, and it's very fast when you have to do some fast patch and you don't want to lose time. It's very intuitive and easy to use. Actually, I'm using Calf plugins because they're great. You have everything from EQ through to compressors to limiters, stereo tools. We have everything in Calf plugin, and that's cool. That is working great. I like them. I think that is one of the most complete suite of plugins available now as a free tool. We have Z Fusion Hub SubFX, that is a great synth and can be compared to Serum, that's actually professional closed source software, because you can do pretty everything. There are also many cool analog synthesizer emulators like Aerorack and many others that I really find interesting. Also, for people now coming to Ardor, there are also plugins available in Ardor when you download Ardor 6. The plugins that community made for Ardor, and they are just great. They're simple, but they are working. You can find many more free tools at this GitHub repository actually. There are many audio tools or DAWs or plugins that you can find, and also VST bridges, so if you need something, that is the right place. I've been working on game soundtracks for 1 year now, and I'm working on many open source games. For example, Super Bombiñas, that's a cool platformer, and I'm composing the entire soundtrack for the game. There is Pioneer Space Sim. I've just done a couple of tracks. I've done some tracks for Mindtest. Hopefully some Mindtest game can use them in their game, but I actually sent one of my tracks that was used for a Mindtest server as the Halloween soundtrack 1 week ago. I also work on games that are not open source, like Yandere Simulator. I've just done some tracks with one friend of mine. I am doing great using Linux. I think that now that I switched to Linux, I don't need Windows anymore. I would like to better explain why free tools are important and why Linux is important to people that are still using Windows or Mac OS to produce music. In conclusion, I think that we have people and we have software to improve audio production on Linux. Nowadays, more companies are going to support Linux and they're going to bring their products on Linux with native support. And that could be beneficial to Linux because we can reach more people, we can have more people helping that can test free tools and can actually contribute to the making of free tools. I'm not saying that we need proprietary tools at all, but I think that we need them to reach more people on Linux. Similar thing is happening in gaming, and that is cool because people are just gaming on Linux now. That was impossible some years ago. So better audio production means better music for open source and Libre games. And the ideal thing will be doing music relying entirely on free tools. So let me know if you have some questions in the Q&A session that we will having right now. And thank you for watching. Hello. I hope you liked the talk. And is there any question? I see. How long takes you to create music for a video game approximately? So it depends on the game actually. There are many games that are just harder. There are some music that are just harder to compose if you compare to others. There are some music that just have to be played in the background. You just need 30 seconds of music to be looped. Some others are more complex because you need to create big songs, big tracks with an intro section and a looped part. So yeah, the answer is like 1 week or 2 weeks or 2 or 3 days. It depends. Usually you put all your effort in composition, and after that there is the mix and master process. And this mixing and master phase usually can take some days, but you want everything to be good. So you have to test the music. You have to play your music on different devices, on different speakers, because every speaker acts differently. So there's, for example, headphones and your phone that's just different. They have different frequencies. They can give you a different sensation, different feeling when you hear the music. So you have to reopen the project and see what's wrong in the master. So yeah, usually 1-2 weeks, and this mix and master section is not more than 2 or 3 days. But the harder part is the composition, because you talk with the developer, you are trying to understand what he wants, what is the best for the game, what is the best thing, what music fits the most, fits better in the game itself. Because, for example, you create something and it doesn't fit, so you have to work again and to take a step back and to think about your idea again. So this is the harder part. The hardest part is the composition process. So this was the question. Is there any other question for me?
This is Sergio. I don't see any other questions right now. We do have 7 folks in Etherpad, so feel free to add your questions right now if you have any. We're also on IRC, so we're trying to observe that as well.
I am also joined.
If you're putting your questions on IRC, please put question : in all caps in front of it.
Another cameo appearance. So I hope you liked the talk. I wanted to put the effort on which tools we have. We usually people tell me there's no way I'm going to use Linux to produce music, but there are many reasons. Because one should use Linux to produce music, to create music. And the first reason is that Nowadays it's possible. We have many tools, professional tools and compatibility tools, like the one that I speak about in the video, the bridge, bridge by Robert. And so there are no excuses right now.
That is great to hear. Yeah, and it seems like Robert is in the RSC channel as well.
Yeah.
I don't see any other questions. I would like to thank you, Francesco, for your talk.
Thank you.
It's been really great. Natty, thank you for helping us out here.
Thank you. And
Go ahead.
I was going to say thank you all for attending. We're about to go into the closing session in a few minutes, and we'll see you there.
Bye.
Thank you.